Hello and welcome. It is 6 o'clock. It is Thursday. I have to remember the day, and it's the 6 o'clock club. Hello, chat. Hello. Thank you very much for watching. It's Andy from Twisted Narrative here, and today I've got a different face. We've got a very special guest. We've got Ethan from Chthonic Press. Say hello. Say welcome to Twisted Towers.
Yeah, hello. So I'm Ethan. Yeah, I'm a DM's Guild writer and part of a small team who we call ourselves Chthonic Press.
Yeah, yeah, and welcome. We're here today to chat about what you do, to chat about gaming in general, and uh, I think for a while now, but it was impressed upon me or focused upon me in January of this year that I haven't been good at reaching out. I've been doing my own thing, and sometimes I've been very busy doing my own thing, so much so that you just forget there's so much else out there. And we'll come on to the Wizards of the Coast and the OGL in a minute, which is the thing that I say January that focused me. So it's not a New Year's resolution of sorts, but it kind of made me think long and hard, and part of what I want to do with the club, which is one of the reasons why we called it, is to reach out to chat to other people. It doesn't matter whether they are big or small publishers, whether they've never published anything and are just players that enjoy the game, or whether they're GMs. Everybody's got a story to tell. Everybody's got experience to bring to the club and to the table, and this is very much why we're doing these things. And it can be fifth edition D&D. It can be any other system as well. So I'm very grateful for you, first of all, to join us, because otherwise I'd be sitting here just talking to myself and not reaching out to anybody. But I mean, let's start that conversation then. Tell us
Sure.
a bit about you. How did you get into gaming? Um, what's your story up to the point?
So yeah, so I got into gaming. I mean, I always loved like role playing games on computer and things like that. But my sort of first foray into the sort of tabletop realm was Warhammer 40,000. So I used to go Games Workshop, and I really enjoyed painting the miniatures and things like that. And did a bit of collecting for that. And then I remember basically just as Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition came out, a friend of mine bought the starter set and said, "Oh look, let's play Dungeons and Dragons." We were all very nerdy anyway. And I just looked at him and went, "Really, Dungeons and Dragons? Do we really want to play that?" And I mean, we're still a gaming group. How many years on since that edition came out,
Yeah.
and we've been playing it ever since. And yeah, like we quite quickly ended up ordering hero forges of our characters and painting them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really fun to get into. I love character creation in every game ever. So Dungeons and Dragons for me, I'm like, yeah, I love making a character and deciding how they're going to look and their mannerisms and everything. I like to immerse myself in that kind of role playing thing. So yeah, I got really into it.
Yeah, I I think it's one of the natural things. If you like role playing games, you like generating characters. I mean, I certainly do.
Yeah.
I when I was a player, or when I didn't have other people to play my games, I used to just make characters because it's about as close as you could get to playing the game. Basically, it was just
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh right, well let's do this, and I did it for, and it's just great fun seeing what you
it
can come
is.
up
Yeah.
with and imagining all of the potentials, all of these stories that they could have. And I mean, is that what kind of got you into sort of writing? Kind of, what was the step there?
So, I mean, I've just come out of a few year stint of a very, very, very long campaign
Right.
I was sort of. It started off as the Storm King's Thunder book
Yeah, yeah,
from Wizards of the Coast, because I was kind of inspired by the old Gary Gygax Against the Giants modules and everything. So I combined Storm King's Thunder with Against the Giants, because that's sort of like up to level 11 for Storm King's
Yeah,
Thunder, and
yeah,
then it's a higher level for Against the Giants. And then I sort of was like, right, okay, I want villains that will connect things. I want to bring it all together. So I was just mining so much information, everything, and I put a story together that was actually ended up being kind of cohesive. So I really enjoyed making the story. I really fell in love with dungeon mastering. I really like to do it. And then I think it was the Dungeon Craft program that Wizards of the Coast put out for writing Adventurers League stuff that kind of got me sort of, well, that honed me into I want to get a module out for this program. So
yeah.
like, because I did do Adventurers League and I read Adventurers League and I've run Adventurers League stuff. So that was something that I wanted to write. But coincidentally, I had actually started writing a module that's still unfinished. It's like sitting in a in a document in a shared folder somewhere that we started writing a kind of early level campaign, my brother and I, because we both got into it together. And yeah, I think we ended up mining some of it for some of our other adventures, but it's going to come out at some point. We
Yeah.
will eventually get it done.
I very much look forward to that. I mean, it's interesting because obviously Storm King's Thunder is fifth ed, but you kind of reach back to Against the Giants, which is old school really.
Yeah.
And I don't want to seem ageist here, but obviously you're much younger than me. Um, so I mean, when you got a copy of that, I mean, what was your first impressions when you kind of look Against the Giants and went,
I think it's
how many orcs?
what I love about that module though is that, I mean, I've got pretty familiar with a lot of the different editions and kind of know how to
Yeah,
convert between them. I'm good at writing for fifth edition, not so good at writing for the other editions, but
yeah,
I love reading those editions.
yeah,
I mean, Against the Giants, especially the setting of the Hill Giant Chief,
yeah.
is really
I
concise.
know.
It's not a long read at all, which is quite nice. It's something that I
Yeah,
quite liked about it. And then, I mean, that's been updated a couple of times. I mean, it got updated for fourth edition
mhm,
with Chris Perkins. I think it was Chris Perkins also put in Warrens of the Stone Giant Thane,
yeah,
which is like an extra one, which I quite liked. And Mike Schley did all the maps for them. So this is when I was kind of running on VTT anyway,
yeah,
because by the time I was coming to the end of my Storm King's Thunder run, I think was sort of the beginning of COVID, so we moved things online.
yeah,
And then I really enjoyed having these massive dungeons. That was something that was so good about doing things in a virtual tabletop, is just having these huge dungeons that I would never be. I mean, don't think I have enough battle maps to
yeah.
draw the whole things out. They were huge, so yeah, something that was a lot of
Certainly,
fun.
certainly online play. I totally agree with you. Has kind of changed what is problematic about representing certain things on face-to-face gaming,
Yeah,
and I've certainly noticed that as well. And it's interesting you sort of bring that up because there are, especially in the older modules, they enjoyed their dungeons. It was part of the Dungeons and Dragons thing, and I used to look at them and go, it'd be nice to do this, but how on earth am I going to actually do this?
represent it.
Because
Yeah,
you scratch your head and you say, well, I could start drawing it all out and then put pieces of paper to cover things up. And
yeah.
we live in the modern age now, and as you say, virtual tabletop with fog of war, line of sight, and everything else. It's beautiful. I'm running Dungeon of the Mad Mage at the moment,
Oh,
and
nice. Yeah, which
um,
is another mega dungeon.
yeah, and yeah, it's substantially easier to run on a virtual tabletop, I have to say. So you mentioned you work in collaboration with some other people. Do you want to give
Yes.
them a shout out?
So my younger brother Tian is sort of my long-time collaborator. He's collaborated on I think everything I've done, except for some of the, like the freelance stuff that I've done for other people. But anything Chthonic Press related, he's worked on with me, and a few freelance things that we've done. He's been there. I think we bounce off each other really well. So we did We did two Raven Vale adventures. 'Cause I really love Ed Greenwood's Forgotten Realms. A
Yeah.
big lore nerd for that stuff, and so I ended up finding Raven Vale as like a little area that I think is in a third edition. But I think it's in the Silver Marches book, possibly.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, I just really love this idea of this area for doing some adventures. I thought Rawvin Vale sounds really cool. Yeah, then we wrote Rawvin Vale Tomb of the Barracore as like a short adventure that was basically just a little dungeon crawl with some goblins going into a dwarven tomb, basically. So
Yeah.
that was that was like our first kind of non-Adventurous League one. The first Adventurous League one was in Icewind Dale. It was for the Plague of the Ancients run. So like
Yeah.
that was their season, and so we did. I think we did two. We did Roused by Raiders, which is the first one, which is basically I think some. I do not know how to pronounce it, but Remoraz
Yeah. I
had
think
just like yeah,
that's yeah.
that's as good as it can be.
If you watch any of my videos, you know that I am notoriously bad with names.
Yeah,
I've got a bizarre word, blindness. So yeah, Remoraz is
yeah.
certainly good for me.
Whatever the plural of Remoraz
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
Yeah, they like come out of Lonely Wood, and then basically the adventurers have to go and investigate what caused them to leave their nest. Why have they come and attacked the town? And there's some frost giants to fight and things like that. So that was our first ever publication, which did really well. And then we also did a one that was basically called that there was a hook, so you had to pick from a selection of hooks, and one of the hooks was snipe hunt, which I didn't really know was a thing, but it's an Americanism, I think, that's like
yeah,
going on a snipe hunt. It's like a wild goose chase,
yeah, yeah.
and so we then basically took synonym for snipe hunt, so we called the adventure "Searching for a Shorebird," and it's like you're after this snipe, but it's actually a chewinga.
Yeah. All right.
And then they're just like going through the forest, and it's just a load of encounters. So yeah, we did two adventures for that, and I quite enjoyed writing them. But it is a little bit constrictive what you're allowed to do for Adventurers
Uh,
League.
uh,
And
yeah, I was going
yeah,
to say that was going to be my next question. Really, is you've written for both.
hmm
Um, what do you prefer? What do you find the sort of differences? I mean, you know, you can be polite, you can be honest. I've spoken. I, I- I've always said that it doesn't really matter as long as everybody's having fun around the table, whether it's Adventurers League or whether it's homebrew or whether it's a campaign book. There's not one thing that is good. It's all opinion and choice and taste
yeah,
and flavour. But obviously there are differences. So I'm just kind of, if you write for the Adventurers League, I don't want you to get yourself into any kind of trouble.
no. I mean, I'll sort of tell you that. So Adventurers League, that I mean, there are some things that I like about it, but I think we've done quite a lot of Adventurers League things now, and I think some of the formatting that you're kind of stuck to and like obeying a lot of the rules, we're starting to find a little bit sort of constraining
Yeah,
because you're I, I don't have problems coming up with ideas for the settings and the things that they that the season is. So that's not the so much the issue. I think it's just the formatting of writing in a certain way. Because like, if you look at an Adventures League product and you look at anything that Wizards of the Coast puts out as an actual book or for like their charity supplements and
yeah,
things like that, they're not written in the same way at all.
yeah,
And I read quite recently Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen, and I love the way it's laid out. I really like
yeah,
how they've done the descriptors of characters, and there's these things that I'm like, yeah, I want to write in this format. I want to use some of these things, and then it's like I can't do that in the Adventurous League things because of how to set things out. So that's something I'm actually looking forward to. Is that
yeah,
once we're done with the sort of we're working on a trilogy at the moment. We're very nearly finished with our second one of the trilogy we're working on, and then we'll go back to a non DMs, not non DMs Guild, a
yeah, yeah,
non Adventurous League thing. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there are reasons why the Adventurers League has to be written like that. I mean,
Oh yeah.
the concept is is solid. You know, you could go to a local friendly game store or convention. You can take your character along to it that has gone up. And there needs to be balances. You know, there needs to be weights and measures with that kind of thing, because it will throw a table off completely. If oh yes, I've got my staff of the major. Well, you're level 3,
Yeah.
yeah, I know, but I got it. It's like no.
Yeah.
So I fully understand why, but I also totally agree. It's kind of it restricts what you can and can't do,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
can't write it openly either. You know,
No.
you
It's
can't
very
really.
linear, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
again, it has to be, you know,
Yeah,
especially
it's
if you.
convention play. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you know, those constraints are deliberately there, and you have to. I suppose if you read an Adventurers League adventure or supplement, you have to factor in that there has been those constraints when you write it, really.
Yeah.
I do find that very difficult. One of them, I run a number of one shots. Most of my games are campaign play, and I find those are the most challenging to write, because
Yeah.
you know you need a start, middle, and end.
Yeah.
Basically, a one shot is a 3 hour game for me. That's the length of time that we run for, and
Yeah.
I do find that very, very sort of challenging. So hats off to you for all of the stuff that you've done for the Adventurers League. Um, I mean, sort of moving on from that a little bit. Um, you sent me, very kind of you, some PDFs,
Yeah.
and I thoroughly enjoyed them. If you're wondering what they were, I've actually put the links down in the comment section already in the chat, so you can go to. It's on DM's Guild, isn't it?
Yes,
That
it
they
is.
are
Yeah.
on. They are brilliantly written,
Thank you.
incredibly. I don't like to use the word cheap. They are great value for money. I think is the word said for
No, I
them.
think they're cheap. They're cheap.
They're really good. But the one thing that really hit home for me, and one of the reasons why I like them so much, is the grounding of them. We kind of were having this kind of little chat before we came on, um, but I think that is a wonderful thing. Do you want to chat to us a little bit how that came about and what inspired you for that?
Sure. So, I'll go through a little bit of like my background on sort of Dungeons and Dragons. Is that
Yeah,
one of the biggest strengths of Dungeons and Dragons, in my opinion, is the rooting in mythology. So I remember I've gone through old like Dragon magazine issues and found the old like creature catalog
yeah,
entries. And it's like I remember finding the Faction, which is a monster from Scottish myth,
yeah,
which is basically it's a cyclops with one arm coming out the middle of its body, one leg, and you know one eye. It's like a half of a giant kind
yeah,
of thing. It's from myth, and I'm like, this feels very D&D because it's grounded in realism, well not
yeah.
realism, but it's grounded in like folklore and mythology,
Sure.
and so that's something that we wanted to do. And I love the kind of so because this season that we were writing for the adventures that you mentioned was the Feywild season.
Yeah,
It was the Wild Beyond the Witchlight thing, which is very Lewis Carroll, so like Jabberwocky, Adventures in Wonderland, and Through the Looking Glass kind of
yeah,
stuff, which I love that kind of whimsical, bizarre
yeah,
stuff. So, and again, you know, it's rooted from some, not so much folklore, that's literature, I suppose,
yeah,
but I liked the idea of that. And with the Domains of Delight, you could kind of create your own thing. And I'm a big sort of folklore nerd, and found this character called Tiddy Munn, who is a Lincolnshire sort of bog spirit. I think he's sort of sometimes referred to as a creature called a Yarthkin, which is what we decided to refer to him as in D&D, because we took him from sort of folklore and thought, wouldn't it be like a really kind of cool idea to incorporate this character from Lincolnshire, because that's where we're from. So
yeah,
my brother and I wrote the first one. Thought like, yeah, let's do a sort of adventures starring this character, and because of the rules that were put forward in this Adventurers League thing, you were allowed to stat one monster, but they had to be the archfey of the domain that you're writing for. And you can create your own domain and you create your own archfey. So we thought, well, we've got an opportunity to stat an Adventurers League character that is a mythological, not mythological, but
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
folklore
Yeah.
inspired creature. So we're like, okay, well that's perfect then. Let's make this realm a realm inspired by Lincolnshire myths, really. So we called it Fenabog as a not so subtle reference to, to what it is, and
Yeah.
then had this character Tiddy Munn be the archfey. And we were reading some really like interesting old. It's I don't know how to pronounce the surname. But it's MC Balfour or the Cars, which is where most of the stories about this character appear. And he, there's some interesting things that you'll probably notice that we kind of stole from that kind of folklore to use for this
I
adventure.
prefer borrowing.
Yeah, yeah. So it's called Tiddymun and the Stranger Stone is
Yeah.
our first one, and we thought that just sounded very like I don't know, like and the is not something that's really used in fifth edition titles, but we thought like Tiddymun and the Stranger Stone sounds like a fun little fantasy whimsical adventure thing. The Stranger Stone is a thing that's actually from the story. Is that the Yarthkins, which is what he's a member of,
Mhm.
would dance on these flat rocks which are called Stranger Stones. So like, okay, right, got to be some kind of reference to him dancing on the Stranger Stone.
Yeah.
And there was a thing with I think we spun it because I think it was when there was a drought. People would go into the bogs and they would shout, "Look, Tiddy Mun, the water's through," basically meaning that like, there's no water. We need help, and he would replenish the water. And we just spun it the other way around that there's a flood, and
Yeah.
so because there's got to be an element of danger
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
for the players to save the towns. And so my brother, his absolute favourite sort of creature type for playing in D&D is gnomes.
Yeah.
Absolutely loves gnomes. They're Feywildy, so we thought like let's have a village of gnomes. Tiddymun's a small character anyway, so it's like, well, we can make him sort of this like, related to gnomes to a degree. So then that kind of all came together of like, right, okay, so there's a village of gnomes, there's flooding, characters need to go and summon Tiddymun to get him to help, and he goes, "Oh, I'm not going to help you until you need to get the Stranger Stone for me to dance on." And then that precedes the quest, I suppose. That's
Yeah.
the.
No, it's beautiful, and like you say, it's whimsical. It's kind of set in sort of folklore as well, which I've always loved, and not so much these days, but certainly back in the early days of Dungeons and Dragons and the like, there was divide is the wrong word, but there was a separation between sort of European role playing and kind of writing and modules and more American ones. And it's very apparent. You only have to go back and look at the early White Dwarfs and the early TSR modules to see this. And there's nothing. I enjoyed both of them, but it was that grim and grimy sort of real world setting that really appealed to me. And when
Yeah.
sort of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay came out, the first edition, it was like, wow, this is it. There's mud, there's mud. There's no prestigiation. You can't get rid of the mud. No, it's grimy and dirty, and everything is downtrodden. And again, it's personal choice. Absolutely, and don't get me wrong, I love the Dritz books, I love the Dragonlance books, the
Yeah.
novels. I just soaked all of that up. Um, Fantastic lore, and again, loved Forgotten Realms
Yeah.
as a world setting. It's one of the campaign settings that I really know very very well. And I think there was that tying together as well that really appealed to me in the fact that you could play a game in this world setting that you could also read the books of or play the computer games of, and
Yeah.
it was
Exactly. Yeah.
just everything sort of coming together. So if you are listening and you're interested, check those out in the link there. I don't think any of you will be disappointed. It's genuinely. I don't recommend things if I don't 100% sort of believe in them, but they're nicely written. They are Adventurers League designed. Uh, the strength of that, especially if you're going to take it and then home brew it, is it's laid out in a very nice, consistent way. So it's very easy to digest and read, and you don't. With I mean, I like the D&D campaign books, but you can read them, and I've mentioned this on stream before. Is it's hard work. That you have to read the entirety of the book sometimes, especially in the more sandboxy type ones, to
Yeah,
kind of go, okay, now I understand how it all
yeah.
works. When I say it's hard work, I mean it's just a time commitment. It's enjoyable to do, but
Oh yeah, yeah.
it is work because often I get asked, is it easier for you to run a pre-written adventure, as in a campaign book, or do homebrew? And I kind of like to give the pre-written adventure justice, so I like to run it as it was written, because
Yeah, exactly.
otherwise you're not getting that experience. So I'm consciously anxious of getting it right. Whereas when you homebrew, it's like, well, okay, they've gone down there. It doesn't really matter. I can make it up. No one's going to know any difference. Um,
Exactly, yeah.
so I very much appreciate the layout of those modules. It's again, it was really fun to read, easy to
Thank you.
understand, and easy to sort of cherry pick and adapt as well if you want to for any of your homebrew games.
Yeah, I think my brother was running a Wild Beyond the Witchlight campaign, and I think he foreshadowed part like one of the adventures. I think he threw one of them in.
Yeah,
But yeah, what I think is also a fun thing is that it's a three-parter.
yeah,
You can kind of give up whenever you want, sort of through it. So you can kind of say, you can do up to the first bit and then call it a day, or you can do the second part and then call it a day, or you can do all three. Because
yeah,
the first one's basically kind of a setup. You do some fun kind of, there's some role playing and a little bit of combat and things, and then you can kind of end it there. The second one's a bit more of a dungeon crawl with a few role play encounters in it. And at the end of part two, I'd say is a pretty good place to wrap it up because you can just say, yeah, it's done.
yeah,
But then the third one's kind of like the journey back, and then some really like I think they get progressively more crazy. Especially my other writer James, who came on for the second. He had a lot of input, and then when all three of us were bouncing off each other to write them, I think we were going off very quickly. But it
yeah.
was a lot of fun to write, and we hope it's a lot of fun to read.
It
That's
was
the thing.
100%. It was genuinely really nice. And as I say, tied into the folklore, it wasn't repeated content, if you know what I mean. It was
Yeah,
there's only so many stories you can tell, but it felt
yeah,
different. It didn't feel like, oh, yeah, I've read this before. Because let's face it, you go down a dungeon, there's some bad guys, you defeat the bad guys, you take their stuff, and you
yeah,
leave. Um, but it didn't feel like that. It
yeah.
felt like we're telling a story here, which I genuinely enjoyed. Um, Excellent. You said something about you're working on some future products.
Yeah.
Are they top secret? You can't talk about them, or
Oh, I can tell you what I'm working at. So at the moment, we put out the first. So we're doing another set of Adventurers League ones. So we're doing the Spelljammer sort of campaign
yeah,
setting, which I actually really liked. I thought it was a really cool idea for a campaign setting. So I don't know how I came up with the idea of it, but I had this idea. I pitched it to my co-writer and said, right, I want to call the adventure Mutiny, the Ballad of Blunderbuss Bill. That's what I wanted to call the adventure, because I think I'd read some kind of name of a GIF, or or GIF, or however you pronounce the hippo guy's name.
Yeah.
I pronounce it GIF.
I pronounce it GIF as well. Sorry.
But yeah, I know that they made a little joke about how they pronounce their names.
Yeah.
So I decided, okay, right. I saw the name of like a GIF, and I thought, what could I call a GIF in my thing? And then I came up with this name, Blunderbuss Bill, and then I thought the Ballad of Blunderbuss Bill sounds very piratey,
Yeah.
which is kind of what it is. It's like space pirates, right? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And then so we kind of came up with this idea that he has been mutinied, so the first part of it is getting him back on his feet, because he's very downtrodden that he's been mutinied. So the first adventure's getting him back on his feet and everything to go and find the Planet of Treasure. So my brother's favourite movie is Treasure Planet.
Right, yeah.
The campaign setting is kind of Treasure Planet, basically. So we're like, okay, we've got to make some references to this, and worked on that. And so that was kind of like the first one was, he needs to get back on his feet, and then get the little Spelljammer life raft that he has been mutinied and got kicked off his ship onto, and go and get that. And then there's some plasmoids that you have to fight. And I came up with a name. I don't remember why he was called this, but we called the plasmoid boss Fango Sludge, which I thought was which was, I loved calling him Sludge. I just thought it was a great, like, yeah, that hits the mark. And then you have to get an alluvium coin from him, and basically alluvium's just a word for like ooze or sludge or mud or something. So I thought it was like some fun kind of references in there. But that's the first one that we did. We're working on part two.
Yeah.
Got very out of hand. That basically part two is kind of split into two parts, as most Adventurers League items are.
Yeah.
The first one is a selection of very, very silly, very stupid reference, just encounters in wild space.
Yeah.
They all kind of start with, so you're in a little boat with Blunderbuss Bill, and every encounter, something happens, like there's a little read aloud, and he's like, oh, something's on the starboard bow, and it's always on the starboard bow, never ever on the port bow. Just because we thought it was funny, and we made a little like reference that every read aloud gives reference to a degree that this character loves saying starboard bow. And there's just some really like silly things in there. It's all references. And then the second part was quite fun to write. It was like a casino, because you've got to go and get his blunderbuss back, because he's called Blunderbuss Bill. He's not got his blunderbuss, so you've got to go into this casino and actually find a blunderbuss that did belong to him. So that was quite a fun thing to write. So that one's coming out soon, hopefully.
Perfect.
And then the third one, that's called Mutiny: The Blunderbuss of Blunderbuss Bill, as a sequel to The Ballad of Blunderbuss Bill. And then the third one I think is going to be called The Battle of Blunderbuss Bill. So that's that trilogy. And then we've got a few ideas for things that we want to do. I'm quite excited about doing a sort of tribute to an old adventure that's called Reverse Dungeon, which is basically you're playing as goblins. You start with, it's like three parts. The first part you play as goblins. The second part, I think you play as undead, and then the third part you play as mind flayers. I'm not 100% sure, but I really like that module, and I think it's kind of a fantasy thing that people really like to play the goblins. People really want to be the goblins, and Wizards of the Coast did a Red Nose Day adventure that was called, I think it's like For the Glory or Return to the Glory or something like that, which is where you play orcs. But my sort of gripe with the adventure was that it's a bunch of orcs going into a dungeon, and it's just like it didn't really feel like it was anything other than you just so happened to be playing orcs. So we're like, okay, well, what if we make this adventure where we just flip all of the things that you're normally doing? So like, you're defending the dungeon from some characters, and it's like, oh, instead of go and restore that altar, go and desecrate that altar and things like that. We thought would be quite a fun sort of adventure to do.
No, it is. I kind of did a variant on that where the players were playing goblins. An adventuring party had come into their lair, slaughtered them all, and they awoken from their death saves. So the chieftain had been killed and everything else, and they all started out as kind of level 1 goblins, and they sought revenge on the adventurers. So they left their lair, and I've done that quite a few. Not just that, but sort of goblin.
Yeah, yeah.
It's sometimes fun,
Mm,
and you have to be careful these days, um, to basically play the monsters, because
yeah.
Goblin is now a playable ancestry and race and
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
else. So depending on your world setting, it's absolutely fine, and I like cute and chibi goblins just as much as I like horrible, gnarly ones with teeth that are ultra violent and like to eat human flesh. And each is appropriate in the right setting.
I completely agree.
Um,
And I mean, goblins are just infinitely the most adoptable
yeah,
creature. I don't think I've ever played a game where where a goblin's not been adopted
yeah,
or something. I'm playing a Rime of the Frost Maiden campaign at the moment. We've got a kobold.
yeah.
He's with
Of
us.
course you have.
Just
Of course you have.
um, yeah.
It's a
I ran that Storm King's Thunder campaign. There's a goblin um, in a very there's a very unusual place for a goblin to be, but he's called Snurt. And if anybody's read the adventure, they probably know where Snurt
yeah,
is. And there was a funny moment where they freed Snurt and they were instantly adopt him. So, yeah,
yeah. Absolutely. I mean, and this is what is so great about what we do, is that you never know as a GM where it's going to go.
no,
It's very exciting. So I don't need, or I'm not looking, I'm not fishing for an extensive answer on this because it's controversial. But Wizards of the Coast earlier this year announced, well, they didn't announce, there was this kerfuffle over the OGL. Did that affect you at all, or did it concern you?
you know what? So it concerned me.
Yeah,
So I mean, I have written at the moment exclusively for DM's Guild, which is running via a separate license to the OGL.
hmm,
So theoretically, from what I've written so far, it didn't affect me, but I knew how much it was hurting the careers of people who are in that space,
hmm,
who are publishing via Drive Through RPG and things like that. I mean, I think it was. I'll give my honest opinion on it. I thought it was a really bad faith thing to do from Wizards of the
hmm,
Coast. It very often it felt very greedy, and the silence on it
yeah,
I think was very damaging to their brand. I don't think they really truly understand how much their brand is damaged. But I think I read somewhere that, I mean, Pathfinder's sales went up like
yeah. I mean,
1,000%. It's
it,
just like
it
crazy.
yeah, I mean, it was an interesting. January was a very long month for me. I was looking for this because I like to look at both sides of the story. I like
Yeah,
to do that, and I'm not looking up at sort of digging up dirt. It's just something that I think is interesting to
yeah,
to ask basically.
yeah.
Have you thought about writing for any other sort of system, or is D&D your thing? I mean, I suppose the reason why I'm asking that is more the fact that there's a new edition coming out, you know, and that
Yes.
that sort of changes things somewhat.
I think at the moment, I mean, we're doing a lot of D&D writing. I think we're wanting to get into some other games and things like that. It depends what comes along.
Yeah,
I think we've wanted to try some Pathfinder and try like things like Starfinder and things like that. We've been kind of like developing our own system that we're sort of internally playtesting, which is a small project for us.
yeah,
But that's been in the works long before
yeah, yeah,
the OGL. That's to fit a certain need that we want to like a niche that we want to fill that we didn't think was being covered by D&D, which is the main kind of entity in
yeah,
this
yeah.
in this market, isn't it? So at the moment, I think we're fine for running on D&D. I mean, I don't actually know when one D&D or D&D Sixth Edition or whatever we're calling it, 5.5 is
To be
coming out.
honest, Wizards keep changing the name of it, so
Yeah,
I'm not entirely sure they at the moment have decided upon a name. Um,
mm,
I genuinely think that they they are unsure whether if they bring out something that's perceived to be a new edition, whether that'll turn people away from it.
yeah,
Um, so my gut feeling is that they might well call it, um, you know, well, fifth edition revised or something like that.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I mean, they've got such big sales at the moment that
yeah.
I would imagine that they don't want to have that psychological barrier of, oh, it's new. I don't want to learn a new system. I'll stick with fifth edition, which everybody's really enjoying.
Exactly.
So it's an interesting one. I don't think they are going to bring out a radically different game
No.
to what exists now.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because Pathfinder quite recently came out with their second edition, which
Yeah,
was a very revised. It was really revised. I mean, they did everything in one go, and because Dungeons and Dragons want to retain their current user base, because I mean, I think it's doing at the moment. I mean, this era of Dungeons and Dragons is doing the best it's ever done
yeah, yeah.
financially.
Oh,
I think so.
undoubtedly.
So obviously they don't want to lose that success and everything. And I imagine with one D&D, the things they're going to want to do are move it more towards the online market space. I think there's rumors that they're going to be making their own virtual tabletop.
Yeah,
They're going to be doing a few things. I mean, part of that OGL fiasco was trying to protect
yeah, yeah,
certain things like their like. I think it's quite clear they want to make a virtual tabletop
yeah,
and they want to protect it against some of the other virtual tabletops that are out there. And so yeah, that's kind of part of what they were doing there.
yeah,
But yeah, because they're releasing it in chunks and they're releasing it as Unearthed Arcana,
yeah,
effectively, aren't
yeah, yeah,
they?
yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's updates to the current game. So everything, as far as I'm aware, my gut feeling is everything about this game is going to be backwards compatible with fifth
Hmm.
edition because they don't want to stop selling Storm King's Thunder,
No, no, no,
with
no.
their
Absolutely.
or yeah, they want to shift as much of the product that's already out there. Those books are already made, and maybe they do an updated version of
Version.
the
Yeah,
book or everything. But it's like they're coming out with some. But I mean, we're trying to think what's on the release schedule for this year. They've got a Fandelver campaign, so turning the Lost Man of Fandelver into a full
yeah,
campaign. That's coming out, and then Planescape, I think, is
yeah,
coming
yeah.
out, and then to put that book out and then release a new edition, you're just going to have that book for such a short amount of time and then make it
Exactly.
invalid. No, they're not
Yeah,
going
yeah.
to do that. They're going to make sure that they keep their
Yeah,
their profitability.
yeah. I mean, I think whatever it comes out as, it's definitely going to be backward compatible. But I suppose the
Yeah,
only comment I'm saying is whether they call it something new and say it's backward compatible, or whether they just say it's just revised. You know.
yeah. I could see
Um,
them saying it's revised.
yeah.
Actually, I hadn't thought about that before, but yeah, they could
Um,
easily say fifth edition revised.
so you can buy it if you've got some spare cash, or you can just carry on playing it, and you'll get sort of the updated rules through PDFs or whatever through that.
Yeah.
Um, well, we are coming to the end because I've got a game to run tonight. I'm doing Call of the Netherdeep, a Critical Role game.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
but before we go, probably the most important question. Um, Coming up soon, D&D movie. Are you excited? Are you trepidation? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so me and some friends are actually going to go and watch it.
Yeah,
I think I, I don't really know what to say about it. I haven't got so many expectations for it. I think there will be some joy. I think a mate of mine puts it that there'll be some joy in seeing some of the monsters that we know and
yeah,
love on the big screen. But I have no idea what this movie's going to be about.
I know it's a difficult one. I so much want to really enjoy it.
Yeah,
Um, at the same point, I'm kind of terrified I won't, and I'm trying to manage my expectations.
yeah,
I suppose if they had said, right, we're going to make Dritz movies, we're going to film the Dritz books, which probably would make a better TV series, perhaps.
yeah.
But
Mhm.
if it was a known, oh well, we know those books, they're really good. I mean, as long as they do them justice, like the way that Lord of the Rings movies have been done, or the Witcher TV series, or whatever, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah,
But because it's characters that we're unfamiliar with,
yeah,
it's like, I mean, great actors,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a great cast,
Mhm.
but we do know that great actors have been in some terrible movies. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
um, so yeah, no, it's just a question. It's
Maybe I'm cautiously
yeah,
optimistic.
I think that is good. I mean, undoubtedly, I will get to see it at some point. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
definitely very keen. But I think it's out in a couple of weeks' time now. So
yeah, yeah.
um,
Towards the end of the month
yeah,
or
yeah,
beginning of next month.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah,
So yeah, no, I'm excited, but
yeah, me
I
too.
don't want to be excited because I mean, from all the trailers and everything, it looks awesome. It kind of has got everything that you kind of want, but you don't know whether that's it. And
Yeah, I think that they're going for the sort of tongue-in-cheek comedy
yeah,
vibe
yeah,
from it because I mean, like just from the music they picked for their trailer, it's
yeah,
like yeah, you can tell this isn't going to be a fantasy epic. This is going to be
yeah.
yeah, full of gags and things like that. So yeah,
Just
no,
just
I
like you would
think
have round the table anyway.
exactly. Yeah,
So yeah. Well,
yeah.
it's been an absolute pleasure. We were coming up to about 1:45, so I am going to do this. So thank you very much for coming on. Um,
Thanks for having me.
No, no, it's been a pleasure, and welcome back anytime. If
Cheers.
you've
Thank
got
you.
something else coming out, if you just want to come back and have a chat about the movie once we've both seen it, you are absolutely more than welcome. Um,
Thank you.
uh, to everybody in chat, and if you're watching on catch up, please check out Ethan's products. There are 3 things linked in the comments section below. You won't be disappointed. And we look forward to seeing what else you sort of come out with. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching, whether it's in chat now or on catch up. I'll be back again tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Until then, it's goodbye from me, and I'm sure
Yeah,
Ethan.
goodbye for me.
Yeah. Take care, everybody. Stay
Yeah.
safe. Look after each other. Bye for now.